It's not easy in public culture to discern truth. How do we know if we're dealing with a legitimate issue that needs to be confronted, right? Not false complaints, but genuine complaints that we need to take seriously because they're all over the web, and we take it, into account and we behave accordingly? Or are we dealing with false complaints? Are we dealing with a smear campaign? Right? How can we tell the difference in public culture? So let me give you 4 simple litmus tests which make it much easier to discern, and I'll very briefly connect it to my own story. Litmus test 1. Before action was taken against the person who's being accused, was there fact-checking, which means checking both sides, comparing conflicting narratives, cross-checking evidence before action was taken? If that's not the case, you're probably dealing with some other hidden motive. In my particular story, in 2006, false complaints were launched against me. Massive actions were taken. No one ever spoke to me. No one ever checked evidence. No one ever cross-checked. Right? There was no contact at all. 1. 2. Second piece of the litmus test. If new evidence is gathered, do the people who launched the false complaints or supported the false complaints, are they willing to look at it, to check new evidence, which is a core feature of justice? If they're not, right, if people are contacted and everyone refuses to check new evidence, you might want to check, are there corrupt motives? Are there hidden and ulterior agendas? Is this a fig leaf for malice? Connecting it back to my story, between 2006 and 2008, right, I spend an enormous amount of time, money, and pain and tears and anguish, right, to collect an enormous amount of new evidence, which utterly repudiated, right, the complaints that were made in 2006. And when we contacted all the people who supported the complaints that we could find, all of them refused to meet, refused to check evidence, right? Suspicious. That's litmus test 2. Litmus test 3. Do we demonize and dehumanize the person being attacked? Right? And from 2008 right, until 2016, there's been an intense process of demonization, right, launched against me by a former student, right, former wife, etc., who kind of banded together. And of course, what they're doing is they're covering up the fact that they were prime actors in the false complaints. But let me bracket that for a second. Whenever you say you see intense dehumanization, once in a long time, it might be justified. But if you look at it carefully, feel the quality of it. You can actually feel the energetic quality of malice. Feel what you feel like when you read it. When you read the posts, you can actually feel a quality of degradation, dehumanization. Demonization, when that's at play, usually there's another agenda, because people are more complex. And if you can't hold 2 sides of a person and you've utterly demonized them, something else, some other obsessive agenda is at play, which is precisely the kind of demonization that I've experienced through this kind of web attack, internet abuse for the last 8 years, as have many other public leaders. And I'm not unique in this. It's a phenomenon that we use to assassinate leaders, right, through the assassination of their core character. And finally, number 4, right, when the attack is made, right, do those attacking allow for the possibility of truth and reconciliation? Or do they set up, right, the structure which says there can never be healing, there can never be transformation, not only can there not be fact-checking, but it can never be solved? So for example, in my particular story, the people who launched the false complaints in 2006 called the key people associated with me, and they said, right, we've got to make sure that Gafni never teaches again, ever. Well, why? I mean, even if a psychologist who has no business ever having sexual contact with any patient, if a psychologist has sex with a patient, right, and they're part of a psychological association, there's a process of rehabilitation. There's a process of transformation. Now, of course, I'm completely against any sexual contact between a psychologist and a patient, but there's a natural process. There's no assumption that nothing can be transformed. But in my case, we were dealing with false complaints, which means the wound claimed wasn't a genuine wound, so the wound doesn't heal, right? Because a scab never forms, because the wound is not the issue. The issue is the hidden malice that's driving it. So if there's a structure which says healing can never take place, you can bet your bottom dollar, right, there's some other hidden malice at play. Those are 4 litmus tests for cultivating discernment, right, in public culture to be able to discern between authentic complaints and false complaints.